Our 2023 Tesla Model Y long range has now hit 50,000 miles on the odometer, just as we were getting home from a recent 10,000 mile road trip to Nova Scotia, Canada, and back to Utah. And there it is. The car just switched over to 50,000 miles. Our bumper-to-bumper warranty just expired. And we are here on our trip. We're just, it was like 48 miles out of Green River on our big trip when we got to 50,000 miles on the odometer. And then if we switch up to our Nova Scotia trip, we are now at over 10,000 miles on this trip. We have been on the road for 8 days and 3 hours. Like, that's in the car, driving it, in drive for that long, over now 34 days. Of those 50,000 miles, 37,664 miles, or 75% of them, have been on road trips. We've now driven in all of the lower 48 states, as well as all of the southern Canadian provinces that touch the United States, plus Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. We've driven our Model Y on 15 different road trips, adding up to a cumulative 157 days since we purchased it in December of 2023. At 50,203 miles on the odometer, our Model Y has used 16,322 kilowatt hours to power it all of those miles. It used an average of 325 watt hours per mile over that distance. We have free supercharging, so we've supercharged it 80% of these 50,000 miles. I downloaded the invoice spreadsheet from Tesla, and the total supercharging cost would have been $5,847 over 403 supercharging sessions at 206 unique supercharger locations. We have free supercharging because Tesla was offering a promotion at the end of 2023 into the beginning of 2024 to transfer the free lifetime supercharging that we had on our 2015 Model S 85D to a new Tesla. We purchased our Model S in 2019 with 63,000 miles on it. Then we took it on many road trips from 2019 through 2023. Our Model S now has 153,000 miles on the odometer, and it's our primary around-town car. Our Model S was supercharged 5,685 kilowatt hours from superchargers in the time that we've owned it, which would have cost us $2,299 without free supercharging. We didn't supercharge our Model S nearly as much while at home as we do with our Model Y, because when our Model S had free supercharging, the two closest superchargers were 40 minutes north or south of us. But now there are 3 additional much closer locations south of us and 6 closer locations north of us. Between the two Teslas, we have saved $8,188 with free supercharging. Plus, the charging from other sources has all been free, including our house, which has ample paid-off solar. More importantly, we've made countless awesome memories over the years, and we hope to continue doing the same into the future. These pictures show the lifetime map of our vehicles combined from Teslafy. During our Florida Keys trip, we went to the southeasternmost point of the United States, which is in Key West, Florida. And then on our Canadian Rockies trip, we went to Cape Flattery, which is the northwesternmost point of the United States. On our Nova Scotia trip, we stopped by the geographic center of the United States, which is in western South Dakota, actually. Then we went to the east-west center of Canada, and then down to the northernmost point of the lower 48, which is in Minnesota. And it's this little piece of land that sticks up out of Minnesota and is only accessible by land through Canada. And then we made it all the way to the northeasternmost point of the United States, which is in Maine. So clearly, electric vehicles are very capable road trip vehicles. The biggest compromise for most people is the availability of superchargers compared to gas stations. But clearly, despite there being fewer superchargers, we've still been able to drive all over the North American continent. The second biggest compromise for most people is the time it takes to supercharge. We haven't found that to be much of a compromise for us due to traveling with our young children that don't really like long intervals of driving and who need to stop more regularly. Due to now being over 50,000 miles on the odometer, our bumper-to-bumper warranty from Tesla has expired. There is only one repair that was needed under warranty, and that was the actuator assembly for the middle row, which was replaced, and that allows us to tilt the middle row to get into the back row more easily. That happened at 9,745 miles on the odometer. As far as maintenance is concerned, I'll show you my spreadsheet of maintenance costs. Then I'll show you the summary of stats from our road trips driving to the entire lower 48 and most of Canada. I've already shown this in past videos when I've done annual maintenance and ownership costs videos of our Model Y. And so I'm not going to go over this in detail, but just in brief, you can glance down here, down the costs column, and a lot of this stuff has either been free or pretty cheap. The biggest being new tires, which we had installed in June of 2025, and then also there was a tire blowout event that occurred in late 2024. We had to get one new tire installed in that case. So if we come down here, you can see that over 50,000 miles, we've spent just $1,700 on new tires, which is just one new set of tires plus that one single tire. And then the cost per mile of tires only is 3 cents. And then the cost of all regular maintenance, excluding tires, is $312. So that's a total of 4 cents per mile for everything combined, for the cost of operating this vehicle, of all maintenance, and the electricity, since all that has been free as well. On each of the road trips that we've done over the last 3 years, I have created these spreadsheets that list each day of the trip, and generally a bunch of stats related to them that were being tracked by Teslafy, and some of these are calculations on that Teslafy data, and then I create these calculations here for sure. And so this was our Florida Keys trip in 2024. This was our Canadian Rockies trip in 2025, and then this was our Northeast or Nova Scotia trip in 2026. So I've taken all of this information down here, and I've created this master spreadsheet that adds all of those key or high-level stats together across those 3 road trips here. So now we're looking at this line 6 here of the aggregation of all of this information. That is what it took us to drive to all of the lower 48 states and the Canadian provinces along the south. So you can see here the first trip, the days of the trips was 22, 25, and 34, so 81 days total to drive to all of the states and provinces. And then we have total miles, so 7,000, 5,700, and 10,000. So it took us 23,000 miles to be able to drive to all of them. Now, obviously you could do this more efficiently. We are not trying to do this for efficiency. That's what we happened to do over the course of these trips, of all the things we wanted to see and do. Total hours driving, 427 hours of time driving, and then that days wise, that's divided by 24. So this is 18 24-hour cycles of driving, which we obviously didn't do that way. We weren't driving continuously, but that's what it adds up to cumulatively. Total kilowatt hours used, we used 7,600 kilowatt hours to drive that distance. And then this is a fun little historical stat for us. Before I installed solar panels on the roof of our house, over about 2.5 years, our average monthly consumption of electricity was 584 kilowatt hours. That might be high for some people and low for others. There's a lot of variance. So this is a unique metric for us, but it was still interesting to see that on each of these trips, these are multiples of a full month of our household electrical consumption, but this is what it took us to go on that road trip. So 4 months, 3 months, or 5.7 months, or 13 months total of historical electricity consumption. Now, if we look at this next column, this is after I installed solar panels on our house. We now wanted to consume all of the electricity that our solar panels are producing, so our consumption jumped up to match the production. And so now our average consumption, this is over 6 years, keep in mind, is 1,200 kilowatt hours per month. And so now our trips are 1.5 and 2.8 months worth of electricity consumed to go on these trips, and that's 6.35 months of electricity cumulative across all 3 trips. Our watt hours per mile, you can see this first line here. This was our Florida Keys trip, and that was with a Thule roof box on the top of the car. So the 340 watt hours per mile reflects that average over those 7,000 miles. But then we got the Thule hitch box that is on the back of the car, plugged into the trailer hitch receiver. And so that now has 0 aerodynamic drag, and maybe even helps the drag so that the air comes together more smoothly behind the car. Because you can see the consumption is really quite good. It's as good of or better than not having anything on the outside of the car. So 315 watt hours per mile in the Canadian Rockies trip, and then 326 watt hours per mile on our most recent trip to Nova Scotia and back. And so that's 327 watt hours per mile average across all 3. Now we have our average temperatures. This first trip was in March and April, so 64 degrees Fahrenheit makes sense that that's going to be your average. And then this next trip was in July primarily, so hotter, but we were up farther north. And then this second one, surprisingly, has the exact same average temperature over the whole course of the 34 days, and that was in June primarily, last day of May and then into the beginning of July just barely. So average temperature 71, of course, all of these. And I point out the temperature because that does somewhat directly affect your watt hours per mile, since air conditioning is working more or less over this. The end of our this most recent trip that we did, the last several days was quite hot because the heat wave was starting to sweep across the nation, and there were temperatures up around 100 degrees Fahrenheit and high humidity, and air conditioning was blasting. So that's why this is a little bit higher probably than this one. Anyway, total superchargers was 61, 49, and 96 different supercharger stops, not locations, but just stops and times that we plugged in. So 206 supercharger stops, and then total kilowatt hours supercharged was 7,139 kilowatt hours. The price of supercharging comes to $2,780 that it would have cost us if we didn't have free supercharging to drive all over the United States and Canada. So depending on what you're comparing it to, this might seem a little bit expensive, it might be cheaper. Something to keep in mind that it is if you were to charge your car this many miles but from a residential energy source, this would be much cheaper. That's where I'm comparing this to 18.5 cents per kilowatt hour, which in 2026 right now is the residential national average, and this cost would go down to $1,300. Where I live, the cost is about 11 cents per kilowatt hour, so it would be probably sub 1,000 to go this 50,000 miles. Total kilowatt hours from AC charging. So this is anytime that I'm charging from, using my mobile connector, plugging in the car to some power outlet somewhere out in the world, and I charged a little bit, but most of it was supercharging clearly. So that's 780 kilowatt hours, and the cost of that electricity would be $144 at 18.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then the total kilowatt hours from both sources combined. So this is all of the electricity that it took to drive to go all over the United States and Canada. So this is not the full 50,000 miles. This is whatever I showed over here that the number of miles of these trips is. So this is over the 23,000 miles that it took us to drive all over the United States and Canada, was 7,919 kilowatt hours. And then comparing it down here, this would be $1,465. Total hours supercharging was 85, or we can round it up to 86 hours of time supercharging. And a lot of that we were waiting for, but there were times when we wouldn't be entirely waiting, maybe at some kind of supercharger destination that's near a destination like a hotel. And there were times where I'd drop off Jessica and the kids, and then I'd go to the supercharger, and then it wasn't as big a deal. The average gasoline price per gallon at that time in that location when we were traveling, the average came out to $3.22 on this first trip, and then $3.6, and then $4.09. So that's an average of $3.65 per gallon of gas, average over these 3 years in all these varied locations. And then the comparison of a gas car that gets 25 miles per gallon comes to that it would have cost us to use that much gas, $3,435. And so how much more that costs than supercharging is $655 more to take a gas car. Now some people might look at that and think, well, it takes longer to supercharge than gas up, so I'm just going to pay that $655 and save time, and that would be your prerogative. You could certainly do that. And then just another comparison for us, if we were to tow our RV to go all of these locations and it's getting 9 miles per gallon, then the comparison is $9,500, and that's $6,761 more than supercharging. So not a fair comparison. It's a totally different type of vehicle, but it is one we have, and we could have used it technically to go to all these locations, but it would have very much changed the logistics of our trip, and I'm happy to have the nimble Model Y that we used instead. For our Florida Keys trip, we drove through 21 different states, and we visited 8 different national parks. For our Canadian Rockies trip, we drove through 9 different states and provinces, and we visited 11 different national parks, but you can see that I don't have ones in all of the columns here. So some of the places are just general points of interest, and they're not national parks specifically that we visited, so those are not included in 11 there. And then in the Northeast trip, we drove through 34 different states and provinces, and we visited 15 different national parks. There's also an international park in here, and some historic parks as well. To show that on the map here, the national parks that are outlined in red are the ones we have not yet visited. So Isle Royale, we drove through this general area on this northeast trip, but we didn't try to go to the island because you have to get a shuttle or a ferry out to the island, and it's really cost prohibitive. So there's nothing you can do to drive out there. Black Canyon of the Gunnison, we wanted to go to that one, but just the constraints of the trip on the way home and the time that we had and where it is, we haven't yet gone to that one, but we've gone to these others in Colorado on past trips. And then you can see dried tortugas. We went down to Florida, and that one's another one you can only get to via boat, so we have not been to dried tortugas. And then there's all these other national parks in like Hawaii and Alaska that we haven't been to. And then you have the Southwest. So there's a ton we still need to do in California, one in Nevada, and then a couple in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. So we're going to plan on working on visiting these over the next couple of years. We'll see how that plays out. Whether that'll be in our Model Y or in our truck and trailer is yet to be seen. But all of these other national parks, all through the main part of the United States, we've seen. And this doesn't include any of the national parks or provincial parks up in Canada that we have also visited. I should also point out that some of these national parks we didn't really have enough time to see a lot of it, and so this was a little bit of a survey of national parks, and potentially some of these we will make efforts to go back to and see again in the future, and others we think we saw enough and we don't intend to go back. I hope this has been helpful to see what the Tesla Model Y long range has been capable of. I've already published many videos of our Tesla road trips, and I will continue to edit these road trip videos as quickly as possible to share with you all how these road trips went for us and the awesome memories that we've been able to make in the car. Make sure you subscribe and change the notifications to all to get notified when our videos publish. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.